Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Patriot Show. My name is Anthony Stephen Malone. I am your host. Today, I am here with a very special guest on the show from the United States, Timothy Patrick Gill. Senior executive, 30 years experience, and he's held executive leadership positions with the FBI, the CIA, and the EPA. Tim, welcome to Patriot Show.
Oh, thank you very much. It's happy to be here. It's a pleasure to speak to the audiences globally and within the UK there. I think we have so many common experiences that I'm more than happy to share what we can talk about.
Yeah, we have to be careful what we do have to talk about. Okay, would you like to tell my viewers, I know you're a very humble man and you have achieved some incredible things in your career and you continue to help a lot of people as well. Can you give my viewers a brief overview of yourself, please?
Of course. Well, first of all, I grew up in a very tight, large family, and my father was an FBI agent. Grew up in a whole family of law enforcement, and having gone through college, I went with the national security community with the CIA and working environmental terrorism issues with the EPA. But more importantly, I had developed an expertise with regard to weapons of mass destruction with both the CIA and national security community. But I really want to focus today on what most of my focus has been on with regard to terrorism, counterterrorism, and countering the weapons that supply terrorism that make them a national security threat, and how terrorism translates into facilitating operations with transnational organized crime, and how crime and terrorism work together in really impacting our societal norms in business and elsewhere.
Yeah, they are some very deep and complicated subjects there. Just like to point out to my viewers as well that Tim, very humble, obviously, he's won 2 awards in the Central Intelligence Agency for his work. Would you like to speak very briefly on that?
Of course, after 9/11, I haven't been a clandestine officer working with our national security partners. After 9/11, at the time, I was a senior intelligence officer with the FBI, and I was assigned back to CIA working joint operations. As part of that, I was fortunate to work 2 major accounts, which was working against Lebanese Hezbollah in Iran, as well as working against Al-Qaeda in the pursuit for crude chemical biological weapons. Having worked in both realms as the senior FBI liaison to CIA for 10 years, I was fortunate to really work interagency joint task forces to bring down 2 FBI most wanted terrorists. It was a team effort, and as part of that, it was a great opportunity to really understand the breadth and scope of how transnational terrorism has reached our borders, and reached our borders not only from the perspective of not only targeting the bomb thrower or the shooter, but more focused on the terrorism equation. What is in the terrorism world, and how do you dissect it and dismantle it? And that's where we kind of learned how terrorism is broken as part of a 3-part equation. You have the fundraisers, you have the logisticians, you have the operators. And if you, in your investigative and your intelligence collection skills, you really need to focus on wiping away the fundraisers and taking out the facilitators and logistics and the safe houses that enable terrorism to happen. And that's kind of where we kind of led us to where in my current realm of combating human trafficking, we learned how human trafficking has been the #1 financial engine that has fueled terrorism.
Yeah. A lot of my viewers will not be aware of that. A lot of law enforcement personnel across the globe will not be aware of that fact. I think it's very important that that is highlighted, because the human trafficking routes, the rat lines, are the same rat lines throughout the world. They're still there, still operational, including the Middle East and Central America. And these rat lines are used not just for human trafficking, high value targets, terrorists, weapons, money, anything they need to move, they use on the same rat lines as the human trafficking. So that's a very important point to bring up there.
And so true, so true. I mean, with regard to, and in order to really get a breadth in the scope of understanding trafficking, one has to really look back as to how does the trafficker recruit as some of these traffickers, when we debrief them in their custodial incarceration, is how do you recruit these people? How do you recruit these girls? Well, you're not recruiting them, you're abducting them. And a lot of people mix up human smuggling with the trafficking. Human smuggling, you're paying someone to move you. Human trafficking, you're being actively abducted. Now, in the United States alone, you have this passive abduction and you have active abduction. Passive abduction, and this is one of the things that we're learning, is you have a lot of these teenage girls for which, they're living in these rural areas, or maybe they become abused and so on. And sometimes their best friend becomes their laptop or their cell phone, and they start sharing too much about themselves on social media. And this is, and when they start sharing too much about themselves on social media, that becomes red meat to the abductor, to the trafficker. And what we're learning more and more with regard to MS-13, the gangs, and these other gangs, they're doing a lot of dirty work for the transnational terrorist group, as well as the transnational organized crime group. They're doing a lot of the dirty work with regard to abduction. So when these girls are being abducted, or they're being sold and moved online, this is profit for eventually the transnational organized crime terrorist group. And so it's involved into a number of a multivariant threats process.
Yeah, it's a very complex situation, which would take hours or weeks to give a basic brief on it. And even then, we wouldn't even scratch the surface of it.
So very true.
Yeah. On that one, what cooperation or what better ways could bridge between agencies and countries to help tackle the problem of the trafficking?
It's intelligence. It's shared intelligence. I mean, when I first got into the intelligence realm, of course, this is as the kind of the birth of the internet was coming about in the mid 90s. But in today's world, there's so much out there with regard to open source intelligence collection, looking at what information is being shared. And that is key because, an intelligence agency doesn't need to share its most deepest, darkest secret. It can share amongst other agencies, other countries, shared open source intelligence, what everyone's seeing, because not everyone's all well versed in what to look for out there with regard to identities and movements. A lot of these terrorist groups, a lot of these operators, I kind of compare them to the current day organized crime family kingpins. They're not as smart and they're not as sophisticated as their fathers of the former organized crime family. So what I say is that they tend to share a lot of information out there on the internet through other communication issues with regard to tradecraft and all that. Do all terrorist leaders do this? No, they do. They do share their information through encrypted means, but it comes down to a dedicated analyst, plural, to really go in the deep dive in doing a full-scale targeting package on these traffickers and how they're talking. And more importantly, is talking to those survivors of human trafficking, how they were abducted, how they were moved, identities. And that's key because, the takedown of traffickers only occurs when you have a very substantive targeting package that can give you the full spectrum of who the identities are.
Yeah, I think, absolutely on that one. With organized crime and the trafficking, there's a lot of networks out there. There's a lot of organizations that are doing it. Just two of the organizations that we've come across, Hezbollah, Haqqani network. They
Right.
seem to be putting their tentacles everywhere. The Hezbollah network, my viewers might not realize, organized crime and terrorism now are starting to converge and be not one, but not far off it. In your extensive experience, what have you seen of this? How have you seen it evolving over the past few years?
Well, I think in particular with regard to Lebanese Hezbollah inside the United States is more like an organized crime family than an actual terrorist group. They've got their hands in all kinds of criminal activities. One doesn't have to look that far with regard to the 1999 takedown of the Hezbollah terrorist group cell in Charlotte, North Carolina, when they were smuggling cigarettes out of Charlotte back to Detroit, and the proceeds were going back to Beirut to fund terrorism. And so with regard to Hezbollah, they look at the United States as an ideal money bag to fund terrorism overseas. Would Hezbollah mount a terrorist attack inside the United States? I seriously doubt it, because that would really hurt their purse strings. And with regard to Iran and their relationship with Iran, I mean, Iran, again, very focused on exploitation. States with regard to, instead of actually doing a actual terrorist attack. Conversely, if you look at Al-Qaeda, they're far different than a Hezbollah. Al-Qaeda doesn't really give a damn about blowback, whereas Lebanese Hezbollah and Iran, they do.
Yeah, I think because Al-Qaeda haven't got a headquarters or a country,
Yeah.
I think Hezbollah, they're not going to put their name on any attack, but they will help facilitate, which is what they're doing now. They facilitate movement, the safe houses, human trafficking, and the terrorist organization. Well, I think they're absolutely spot on. Hezbollah will not put their name on anything, because the blowback on them would be phenomenal, and on Iran. But with other networks like the Haqqani and Al-Qaeda, yet again, I think the future might see a proxy force being used in the name of an organization.
And let's focus on Haqqani. I mean, let's focus on the opium drug sales, opium drug market coming out of Afghanistan, and the relationship with the cartels in Mexico and Latin American and South American cartels in moving that product. That's a big cash cow for Haqqani. And people need to realize that is a major issue. So people wonder how you see the Haqqani and Taliban trying to bring men's and try to get the U.S. out of the Afghanistan, because they want to protect that cash product for movement out of there.
Absolutely. 90%, even now, after 20 years of being at war in Afghanistan, 90% of the world's or more opium population, it comes out of Afghanistan still to this day. So that's a lot of money being put against us. And the extremists, Haqqani network, Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, and Iran are using the opium and the heroin as a weapon against the West hence why the prices have dropped phenomenally on narcotics, pretty much across the board coming out of Afghanistan, because they're trying to pump as much drugs into Western countries, Europe, UK, and the United States specifically, because it is drawing on the resources of the American government and agencies to tackle it.
Yeah.
But to me, I can't even start to get my head around the fact that even after all of this, 90% of the world's opium still comes out of Afghanistan. Yeah, people have just got
you know, and then of course, then between that influx, then you have the fentanyl and parfentanyl coming out of China. I mean, it is the flood market, the market's being flooded by so much high-end, illegal distribution of narcotics.
Right. On a slightly different note on that one, because we could obviously speak for hours and hours. Can you tell us a little bit about Spectre Security Group, which is your organization?
Of course. Spectre Security Group was started back in 2017. I partnered with a good friend of mine, Walter Lupe, who is a disabled veteran. He had done numerous tours in Iraq. And so we started this company, and the company was focused, we weren't focused primarily as just a kind of a fly-by-night or corner security company, but we were focused on developing it as a protective intelligence company. Because prior to starting Spectre, Walter and I had come from another company where we kind of developed a very large intelligence operations center. And one of the part of the Intelligence Operations Center is developing persons of interest, persons of extreme interest profiles that were of great interest to targeting our clients. And our clients, majority of our clients up to that point were C-suite executives, CEOs, CFOs, CIOs, and so on. And their families were being targeted as well. But why were they being targeted? Well, they were being targeted because of some of the controversial agendas or products that they were selling. And so you had these online warriors, online targeters, and of course, eventually over time, these online persons of interest targeters were now becoming physically operational in targeting these families and these companies. So we took our group, our teams, to really not only focus on using protective intelligence to supplement our executive protection teams to support and protect our executives that are our clients. So fast forward to 2017, we developed our own company because Walter was a disabled veteran. I myself, I'm a certified fraud examiner. So we kind of combined our expertise along with a team of intelligence analysts. And our biggest clients came after really the October 2017 Las Vegas attacks targeting the country music entertainers, Jason Aldean, Luke Bryan, and so on. And we were brought into Nashville, Tennessee to serve as subject matter experts on security intelligence to better train the security managers protecting these entertainers. And why, people ask why would anyone want to target a country music community? You know, they kind of felt they were separated from all that. Well, what we learned from some of these terrorists that were caught is they look at Nashville, Tennessee as really the hotbed of a target, not only because it's when country music entertainers, country music fans are very patriotic, they're very pro-military, and they're very pro-Christian. And this is one thing they believe was a real bigger threat to, of course, back then you had the Islamic State spread of their caliphate, They wanted to spread the caliphate inside the United States. They look at Nashville as a ground zero of targets.
Yeah.
And what happened in Las Vegas, although it wasn't in Nashville, it was Las Vegas, you had a concert there that was ideal for picking. And you had this individual who was a lone actor, inspired by radical Islamic extremism, and he chose to take out many of those fans. And so we were kind of bought into better educate the security managers. So Spectre Security Group, we really pride ourselves on very sophisticated protective intelligence work, sophisticated executive protection, and sophisticated brand protection for that executive or that principal.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's absolutely everything you've said there, especially a lot of people won't realize that just because you're not in the military, you do become a target, even if you support the military. We get.
Well, I just want to add one further thing, that one of the other drivers that really led to us to really make our business platform sophisticated was really going back to the May 2016 Al-Qaeda fatwa that was targeting US, UK business leaders and their families. And this really took a lot of Fortune 500 executives off guard. Why would they want to target us? Well, because they were representative of companies that had supported our global war on terror.
Yeah, I think it's very important, and thank you for bringing that up on camera as well, because a lot of people in the United Kingdom will not even be aware of that. It wasn't put out very much in the public domain. People were not really aware of it. It is very important that people are made aware of it. Just because you don't wear a uniform doesn't make you a target. You need to be situation awareness and just obviously take precautions. That's to all business leaders out there. Don't think you're not going to become a target, because the one time you think you're not might be the time you actually are. What, in your opinion, the future threats that we can expect, obviously with cyber security technology, that has come on a long way. That is a double-edged blade. It's great for agencies and companies to be able to stop attacks and obviously threats, but the bad guys have got the technology as well. Can you speak a little bit about that, please?
Well, I always go back to my mentor at CIA. He always said, two things bring down society. It's cyber and biology. Yeah. And as what we have seen with regard to COVID-19 and the greater evidence that's emerging that perhaps this is a human vector that it possibly has caused this proliferation of this biological threat, it makes you question what kind of ideas or inspiration does a non-state actor terrorist group take from all that? Because we always say, biology does bring down society. Well, this is one thing that's always been of great interest to Al-Qaeda and its lone actors, okay? So let's go to the next step, the cyber end of things. Well, you have the cyber means, you have these young jihadists that are very cyber sophisticated. They are sharing information through all kinds of platforms, encrypted platforms. So now you have a chimera of threat. You have a cyber threat actor, perhaps that is also have some knowledge of microbiology. And what can happen there? Well, the world is open for that in regard to, hey, it also invites other insider threats. You may not be able to get inside the laboratory, but can you insert someone into that laboratory that would create a biological weapon that could also lead to a threat actor hacking into that system and getting the necessary DNA to re-engineer a biological weapon?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, the capabilities are there. The rogue scientists could be there.
Yeah.
It comes down to if you have this confluence of commonality of radical ideology between the cyber actor and the rogue scientists, I'd say the future comes down to extreme unconventional threats that are going to be even more elusive from the individual sitting on their couch with a laptop in their hand.
Yeah.
And in today's environment compared to 20 years ago, you had the proliferation of the foreign fighter pipeline going to Afghanistan to be trained. In today's environment, they're saying, don't come to us, we'll come to you with information. And you can do whatever information you need to do to develop that weapon.
Yeah, it's definitely something which I think everyone has to think about in the future, because technology being used by terrorist organizations, Al-Qaeda, Haqqani network, Hezbollah, is quite sophisticated, and not just their operations, but their intelligence, their counterintelligence. So I think everyone has to bear in mind as well.
And let's not forget, sorry to interrupt, but you look at Hezbollah and you pointed out they become the facilitators. Well, if they're financially constrained, who's to say that they would not facilitate the sale of some kind of lethal chemical weapon out of Syria and give it to some other radical ideologist for their own use? I mean, there's a wide open field of opportunities here.
Yeah, I think the counter proliferation, the tracking and finding where some of these old chemical weapons are in Syria, and if Hezbollah have got them, I think that needs to be looked at and addressed, because being able to facilitate or to sell a weapon in this day and age won't be that difficult. And we've all seen what a biological weapon can do to economies. It isn't just the amount of people that it kills, it's what psychological effects it has on towns, cities, and countries.
Yeah.
I think that is definitely something for agencies, people way above my pay grade, to have a look at on that one. Thank you for bringing that up about the Hezbollah as well. Very important that. On this one, obviously we could talk for a long time, but obviously I'm very aware that you do have a lot on your plate at the moment. I would like to end the interview with asking you, do you have a message to any veterans out there who are going through a hard time at this moment?
Of course, having come from a family of veterans from World War II onward, they've seen things that would make the public blush.
Yeah.
They've seen things that they had very difficult for them to talk about. But at the same time, there's promise, there's opportunity. There's so many more opportunities now than 20, 30 years ago. So my message to them is, don't give up. There is a brotherhood out there. There's a brotherhood that's more than happy to talk to you and share our experiences. Because believe me, I understand that you don't want to talk about those experiences, not only because of security issues, but also because of you don't feel that the people that may be around you that never went down range with you will understand. Believe me, there's a network of people out here that do understand, and they want to share their message with you as much as they want to hear from you. So don't give up. There's all kinds of networks of support out there, and I've seen it, and I've seen people get better from just dealing with, just talking about their experiences.
Okay, very powerful message. That is obviously for all veterans across the United States and the UK as well, and anywhere.
Yes.
If you want to talk, pick up the dog and bone, speak to a veteran, speak to somebody. You don't have to be alone on this one. We've all been through hard times. We've all seen a lot as well. you're not alone out there. I've been through hard times, a lot of the guys have. Just speak to someone, have a chat. A problem shared is a problem halved, and there is a support network out there for you as well. Okay.
And you know, more, I just want to add one thing. One of the things that I've seen with regard to the Veterans Administration and other veteran support groups is there's a whole network of relief dogs that are out there that provide great support for veterans suffering from PTSD. Dogs are great relief mechanisms if you don't have someone to talk to.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will be having a special interview about our little four-legged friends in a not too distant future as well, with some incredible stories and footage to go with that as well. Timothy, I'd like to say thank you for being on the show, but on this very rare occasion, I'd like to say thank you for your service as well.
Oh, thank you for your service. Thank you.
Incredible career. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that is all from the Patriot Show. I hope that has been informative, and I hope you have enjoyed the interview tonight with Tim as well. Take care, everybody. Tim, if you can stay on the actual line, if everyone can stay tuned for a couple of minutes, and you'll watch some adverts from veteran-owned companies, both in the United States and across the United Kingdom. Thank you for watching the show. Stay safe.